The chamber of the Galactic Council stood as a monument of arrogance, its high dome glittering with crystals harvested from stars long conquered, walls lined with banners of alien empires that had survived for thousands of years, and the voices of alien leaders echoing with a sense of absolute control. But today those voices turned sharp with laughter, cruel and mocking, as the lone human envoy stood in the center of the vast floor, his figure small compared to the towering alien leaders around him, his voice calm but urgent as he spoke of Earth's position, his words simple and direct, a final warning to the Council that humanity would not bow, humanity would not surrender, and humanity would not remain silent in the face of oppression. But his words, instead of stirring respect, ignited waves of scorn, the chamber filling with sneers, claws tapping, wings beating, and scales rattling as the most powerful beings in the galaxy dismissed him as if he were a child speaking of fire to those who lived on suns. The envoy's eyes did not waver, his hands remained at his side, but inside him burned a knowledge, a quiet certainty that Earth was not what these aliens believed, and that their laughter would one day die in silence. But he did not argue further, he did not beg, and he did not try to explain Earth's secret preparations. He simply turned, walked through the heavy doors, and vanished into the shadows of the hall, leaving the alien counselors still laughing, still believing they had nothing to fear. One of the alien leaders, a scaled being with golden eyes, slammed his fist on the table, making the crystals hum, declaring that humanity had no seat in the galaxy, no right to stand in the Great Hall, and no power worth noting. His words met with cheers. But in the dark corners of the chamber, a few quieter voices hesitated. A few older races remembered something strange about Earth, a history of survival against impossible odds. But those voices were drowned in arrogance, silenced by the Council's pride, as the majority laughed and returned to planning the division of resources, already speaking of how they would soon break Earth completely. Far across the galaxy, hidden beyond the view of those arrogant eyes, Earth's warships were moving, not in loud fleets but in silence, slipping through the void like shadows, their hulls black, their engines masked, each ship carrying weapons that the Council had never seen, weapons forged in desperation, designed in secret laboratories beneath Earth's mountains and oceans, tested in silence against mock fleets, and kept hidden until the day would come when the galaxy itself forced humanity to reveal them, and that day was close, closer than the Council could imagine. On Earth itself, factories ran without rest, soldiers trained in silence, and leaders spoke quietly of what was to come, their faces grave but determined, because they knew humanity had been mocked before, humanity had been underestimated by predators, tyrants, and empires, but every predator that underestimated Earth learned the same lesson. Humans did not break, humans endured, and when pushed to the edge, humans struck back with a fury that shook worlds. Inside the Council Hall, the alien voices grew louder, their arrogance feeding on itself, one after another rising to insult the envoy who had left, calling humanity a species of dirt walkers, fragile flesh trapped on a single planet, a mistake of evolution that had somehow stumbled into space, and they laughed as they spoke of stripping Earth bare, of turning the planet into mines and its people into slaves, and the laughter rolled like thunder under the dome. But beneath that thunder was a faint tremor, unnoticed by most, the tremor of fear that some dared not voice, for they remembered the wars of old, when smaller species had been ignored until they rose, and they remembered the whispers of Earth's soldiers, stories that had spread like wildfire from the few who had fought humans in border skirmishes, stories of warriors who refused to fall, of soldiers who fought with broken bones and bleeding wounds until the last enemy fell, stories so terrifying that even hardened alien generals spoke them only in hushed tones. Yet arrogance blinded them, arrogance louder than caution, arrogance stronger than memory, and so they ignored the warnings, ignored the stories, and ignored the quiet, burning look in the envoy's eyes as he left, and they sealed their fate in that laughter. Outside the great chamber, the envoy walked down the cold halls, each step echoing against stone carved before Earth even had fire, his face stern, his mind already thinking of the message he would send, a simple report to Earth. The Council has mocked us, the Council has dismissed us, and the Council has chosen its path. Far away, in hidden command centers buried beneath mountains and oceans, lights glowed red as encrypted signals carried his words back to Earth, back to the waiting commanders who had been preparing for this very outcome, and those commanders, reading his message, gave silent nods, for they had expected nothing else from the Council, and they had already made their choice. Earth would strike back, and when it did, the galaxy would know fear. The Council Hall slowly emptied, alien leaders returning to their ships, still chuckling, still whispering about the human envoy's arrogance. But they did not know that even as they laughed, their fleets were being watched, their routes mapped, their weaknesses recorded, because hidden in the void, human scouts followed them, silent and unseen, gathering every detail, every gap in their defenses, every pattern in their movement, so that when Earth struck, the blow would land with perfect precision, brutal and merciless, like a storm unleashed after centuries of calm. On Earth's surface, civilians lived in uneasy silence, many not knowing the full truth, but all of them feeling the tension in the air, factories roaring day and night, skies filled with the trails of warships rising, whispers spreading through the cities, whispers that war was coming, that the Council had pushed too far, and that humanity's answer would be one the galaxy would never forget. In that moment, as stars turned above Earth and the Council mocked far away, two truths stood apart. The truth the Council believed, that Earth was weak, broken, unworthy, and the truth humanity held close, that Earth had been silent only to prepare, that every insult, every dismissal, every arrogant laugh had been fuel for the fire, and that fire was now ready to burn across the stars. The envoy's ship left the Council's world, silent and steady, vanishing into the darkness of space, carrying with it the weight of the galaxy's arrogance and the promise of Earth's reply, and in the silence of that ship, the envoy allowed himself a single thought. When Earth answers, the galaxy will tremble. Would you like me to continue expanding this same Part 1 draft until it reaches full 2,000 words? I've written about 1100 so far, keeping it gapless, suspenseful, and in simple basic English. The alien fleets gathered with confidence, their banners stretching across the stars, their commanders boasting about the swift destruction they would deliver to Earth, and the Council members congratulated one another in advance as if the war had already been won. But behind those arrogant words there was no true understanding of humanity, no knowledge of the storm that was waiting in silence, and as their warships moved like glittering waves across space, the humans watched without moving, waiting in the dark, preparing for the right moment, because Earth knew that the first strike was not always the strongest, but the last strike was the one that mattered. Alien admirals stood on their bridges, their voices calm, their crews laughing as they described how fragile human ships must be, how quickly they would burn, and they imagined Earth's soldiers falling to their knees in terror. But on the other side, in hidden command centers, human officers studied every movement, every line of ships, every formation, with eyes cold and steady, speaking in low voices, their words simple, their orders precise. Because humanity did not waste energy in boasting. Humanity saved its voice for the moment the galaxy would hear screams. The first wave of alien fire lit the void, blazing lines of energy tearing through the emptiness toward Earth's forward outposts, planets defended only by small fleets, and explosions followed, stations shattered, and the aliens cheered as the first sparks of war turned into burning light. But Earth did not panic, Earth did not scream, Earth did not rush. Instead they allowed the Council to celebrate, allowed the arrogant fleets to believe in their victory. While hidden beneath shadows, humanity's real forces remained unseen, watching, waiting, their weapons locked and ready, their commanders whispering, "Not yet, not yet, let them come closer, let them open their pride wider, because when the strike comes, it must come like a hammer from the dark." The alien commanders sent mocking messages to Earth's networks, laughing as they broadcast demands for surrender, calling humans insects, calling them soft, calling them unfit to stand among the stars. But no reply came, only silence, and that silence unsettled a few of them, because silence in war was never weakness, silence in war was waiting, silence was danger. On the surface of Earth, people gathered in cities, watching the skies where giant screens displayed fragments of the ongoing battle, faces tense, hands gripping one another, children clinging to parents. But behind those worried eyes was also a deep fire, a faith in the quiet strength of their soldiers, because humanity had survived plagues, wars, disasters, and centuries of struggle, and every trial had carved them into something sharper, something unyielding, and now as alien fire rained down on outer defenses, the people whispered together, "Hold the line, wait, let them come closer, let them think they have won." In orbit around Earth, the true fleet remained hidden, massive warships with black hulls that absorbed the light of nearby stars, their engines cold, their weapons silent, crews strapped into place, eyes staring ahead, hearts beating steady, waiting for the signal, and the signal would not be long. The alien armadas pressed deeper, their laughter echoing across comms, their admirals celebrating the supposed collapse of humanity. But on one alien bridge, a younger officer frowned as he studied the tactical displays, his voice uneasy as he pointed out the strange silence of Earth, the absence of a full defense, the lack of panic in human transmissions. But his warnings were dismissed, his commander snarling at him to stay quiet, mocking his fear, and the laughter continued, the arrogance growing, while in the dark void just beyond their senses, human warships glided closer, their cloaks shimmering, their weapons humming, their targeting systems locking on with brutal precision. The silence was about to end. At the edge of the battlefield, the first flash came, sudden and sharp, a line of human fire cutting through the void, tearing an alien battleship in half before its crew even realized they were targeted, and panic surged through the alien fleet as more flashes followed, invisible shadows revealing themselves as Earth's warships roared to life, missiles streaking through the dark, plasma cannons burning through shields, railguns firing slugs at unimaginable speed. And in moments the laughter turned into screams, the arrogance into terror, as entire alien squadrons collapsed under the first strike of Earth's hidden armada. The human commanders gave no speeches, no long declarations, only simple cold orders: fire, reload, advance, strike again, and their soldiers obeyed with precision, their faces hard, their voices steady, because this was not just war, this was survival, this was revenge. The alien admirals shouted for regrouping, for counterattacks, but their formations shattered too quickly, their fleets unprepared for an enemy that fought like shadows, striking without warning, disappearing before retaliation, and then striking again, until panic spread through the ranks, and ships began to break formation, some fleeing, others colliding in chaos, the order of the Great Council fleets crumbling in the face of Earth's brutal counterattack. The first battle was not yet over, but already the Council's laughter had turned into silence, a silence heavy with the realization that they had made a mistake so great it could not be undone, and for the first time in their history, the mighty Galactic Council began to feel fear. The void of space still glowed with the wreckage of shattered alien ships, burning fragments drifting like dying stars, and the silence that followed was not peace but fear, a silence heavy with the screams that had ended too quickly. The fleets of the Council now broken lines scattered across the battlefield, and in that silence the humans moved like shadows, silent and merciless, striking where the enemy was weakest, retreating into the darkness, and striking again. A rhythm of destruction that no alien mind could predict, no alien admiral could control, and the terror grew with every heartbeat. The alien commanders barked orders, their voices cracking with desperation, telling their fleets to reform, to hold their lines, to rally behind the strongest ships, but each attempt was crushed before it began, because the humans were already there, already watching, already waiting for that order, and as soon as a line began to form, human weapons ripped through it, tearing ships apart before they could find their balance, leaving only chaos behind. In the Galactic Council chamber, word of the battle began to spread, messages rushing through encrypted channels, and the leaders who had laughed only hours ago now sat in uneasy silence, their eyes wide as they listened to broken transmissions, desperate screams of admirals who had sworn victory, now begging for reinforcements, their voices cut short by static as human fire consumed them, and the counselors shifted in their seats, scales trembling, wings twitching, claws clicking, and for the first time the arrogance faded from their eyes, replaced with the beginning of fear, though none dared to speak it aloud. One of the older leaders leaned forward, his voice low and trembling as he whispered that Earth had hidden its strength, that they had prepared for this moment in silence. But his words were silenced by the shouts of others who refused to admit the truth, still clinging to their pride, still insisting it was only luck, only tricks, only temporary. Far from the chamber, in the dark of space, the human fleet advanced, their black hulls gliding through the wreckage without slowing, engines burning cold blue light, weapons glowing faint red, and inside those ships the soldiers sat in silence, faces hard, eyes fixed on their screens, every strike delivered with precision, every command obeyed without hesitation. Because they knew this was not just another war, this was survival. This was the answer to centuries of mockery, and humanity's fury had been forged in silence until it became steel. One ship, smaller than the massive carriers, slipped behind enemy lines, its weapons silent, but its purpose deadly, carrying soldiers ready to board, ready to tear control from the inside. And when its hatches opened, human marines poured into an alien vessel, their armor black, their steps heavy, their weapons sharp bursts of light, and within minutes the screams of alien crews echoed through their own hallways as humans moved forward without mercy, taking command deck by deck, until the alien flagship itself was silenced from within. Alien admirals, seeing their flagship fall, panicked further, some ordering retreat, others calling for suicide charges, but nothing worked, their fleets too broken, their courage too thin, and the humans pressed deeper. Their counterattack not just destruction but a message, a brutal reminder to the galaxy that Earth was not weak, not fragile, and not afraid, and with each alien ship that fell, the fear spread wider, carried on every transmission, every whisper, every scream that reached another world. In the cities of alien empires, civilians gathered around their screens, expecting to see the glory of the Council's victory, but instead they watched in silence as Earth's fleet tore through armadas that had once ruled the stars, and whispers spread through those crowds, whispers of the ruthless humans who fought like shadows, whispers that perhaps the Council had made a mistake, whispers that perhaps the galaxy had awakened a predator they could not control. The humans did not celebrate, they did not laugh, they did not speak, they only advanced, methodical and relentless, and the silence of their strike was more terrifying than any boast. Because the aliens realized that humans needed no words. Their weapons were their voice, their message was their fire, and that message was simple: Earth would not kneel. In the council chamber, the laughter had long died, replaced by angry arguments, leaders pointing claws and fingers at one another, blaming each other for underestimating the humans, shouting that this should never have happened, and in that chaos, one of the quiet leaders, an ancient race with silver skin, spoke softly, reminding them that the humans had warned them, that the envoy had stood in this very hall and told them not to push, not to mock, not to underestimate, but they had ignored him, and now the price was being paid in fleets burning across the stars. Still, pride blinded many, their voices loud, demanding that more fleets be sent, that the humans be crushed at all cost, but beneath their arrogance, their eyes betrayed them, their voices shook, because deep inside they knew the truth, that Earth's silence had been their doom, that the humans had never been weak, only patient, and patience in war was more dangerous than any weapon. The chamber trembled with their arguments, but far beyond their walls, the war was already shifting, the balance of power already broken, and the galaxy itself was beginning to fear the name of Earth. The stars around the battlefield glowed red with fire, and through that fire the human fleet advanced, shadows moving without pause, their commanders silent, their soldiers steady, and with every ship that fell, the galaxy learned the lesson the Council had refused to hear, the lesson the envoy had spoken in calm words before he left the chamber. Do not underestimate humanity. The lesson was written now not in words but in fire, carved into the stars themselves, and those who survived would never forget it. The wreckage of alien fleets drifted in silence, broken hulls spinning like corpses in the endless dark, their banners of pride torn and burned, and through that graveyard of shattered ships moved the human fleet, black shadows gliding with ruthless purpose, their weapons still glowing faint red from the heat of their fire, their engines pulsing like a steady heartbeat, and in the command decks of those warships, human commanders watched with cold eyes, saying little, giving only short orders. Each word carried like steel across the crew, and the soldiers obeyed without hesitation, for they knew this was not victory yet. This was only the beginning of Earth's counterattack. The Council fleets had been shattered, but more were coming, reinforcements pulled from systems across the galaxy, and the Council itself sat trembling in their chamber, claws clicking, wings twitching, eyes darting in panic as reports poured in, telling them of their great defeat, of entire armadas erased in hours, of admirals silenced forever, and the leaders who had once laughed now sat in silence, their arrogance replaced by dread, though some still clung to pride, insisting that Earth had only been lucky, that this could not last. On Earth itself, the people watched with wide eyes as reports reached them, images of human warships standing unbroken while alien fleets burned, and whispers spread through the streets, whispers of victory, whispers of fear, whispers of something greater stirring inside humanity. A fire long buried now burning brighter than ever before, and the leaders of Earth gathered in silence, their faces grim, because they knew the counterattack was not just about defense. It was about sending a message. To the entire galaxy, a message written in fire, a message that no species could mistake. Humanity would not kneel, humanity would not be slaves, and humanity would strike back harder than any empire had ever imagined. The Council still thought of humans as fragile flesh, but they did not see the iron hidden beneath that flesh, the will forged in centuries of survival, the mind that turned every weakness into strength, and the heart that never broke even when the world was falling apart. From the blackness of the void, the human fleet revealed itself fully for the first time, hundreds of warships emerging from stealth, their massive hulls reflecting no light, their sheer size enough to shake the courage of anyone who saw them, and as the alien reinforcements approached, their commanders froze in disbelief, for they had expected small ships, fragile fleets, but instead they faced giants. War machines larger and more advanced than anything the Council had believed possible, ships. Built not for display but for destruction, each carrying weapons forged in desperation, designed to kill without mercy, and the sight alone sent waves of fear through the alien crews. Some ships faltered, some broke formation, and their admirals shouted to hold steady, to remember the Council's power, but the terror was already in their hearts, because they understood in that moment that the Council had not been fighting Earth's true strength before, only the shadows of it, and now the full weight of Earth's power was rising before them. Inside one of the human flagships, the main commander stood tall, his hands clasped behind his back, his face unreadable as his officers reported enemy numbers, fleet formations, and incoming transmissions filled with desperate threats and false confidence. And he listened in silence before giving a single order, advance, his voice calm, his eyes steady, and the ship moved forward, followed by the entire fleet. A wall of iron sweeping into the broken remains of the battlefield, their weapons charging, their missiles armed, their railguns humming with energy, and the galaxy itself seemed to tremble at the sight. The alien commanders shouted to fire, and the void lit again with lines of energy, thousands of blasts tearing through the emptiness. But the humans did not falter. Their shields absorbed the fire, their hulls held strong, and when they returned fire, the effect was devastating, alien ships exploding one after another, whole squadrons vanishing in seconds, and the Council fleets began to collapse under the weight of the brutal counterattack. In the Council chamber, chaos reigned, voices shouting over one another, some demanding retreat, others calling for full mobilization. But none could deny the fear in their hearts. None could ignore the images flashing across their displays, images of their proud fleets burning, images of human warships cutting through armadas like predators through prey, and the arrogance that had once filled the hall was gone, replaced with panic. Because they were watching history change before their eyes. They were watching humanity rise from the shadows and take a place no one had given them. A place carved by fire and blood. A place that would never be denied again. Still, a few councillors refused to admit defeat, their voices sharp and filled with rage, shouting that humans must be destroyed no matter the cost, that the galaxy itself must rise against them. But even as they spoke, their eyes betrayed them, their hands trembled, because deep inside they knew the truth they had laughed at, the truth the envoy had spoken before leaving the chamber, that Earth had been ready, that Earth had been preparing in silence, and that the Council's arrogance had blinded them to the danger growing in the dark. Now that danger stood revealed, and the galaxy could no longer look away. The human fleet pressed deeper, their weapons tearing through alien formations, their soldiers unyielding, their silence more terrifying than any boast, and with every passing moment, the fear in the galaxy grew, spreading like fire across every world, every colony, every people who heard the whispers. The humans are rising, the humans are striking back, the humans are not weak, and the Council has awakened something they cannot control. The brutal counterattack had only begun, but already the galaxy was trembling, and in that trembling silence, humanity moved forward, unrelenting, unstoppable, and merciless. The battlefield turned into a graveyard of fire, burning wreckage floating like dying stars across the void, and yet the human fleet did not stop, their warships moving in perfect rhythm, striking again and again, each blast tearing through alien ships that had once been symbols of the Council's pride, but now they were nothing but broken shells. The aliens fought desperately, firing volleys of energy, launching waves of missiles, but their shots scattered in panic, their formations crumbling under the sheer pressure of Earth's ruthless assault. Human railguns thundered, sending projectiles at impossible speed, each slug punching holes clean through enemy cruisers, while swarms of guided missiles streaked across space like burning spears, slamming into carriers and turning them into clouds of debris, and the galaxy watched in horror as the mighty Council fleets were torn apart by the very species they had called weak. Inside the alien flagships, admirals screamed orders, their voices trembling as they tried to rally their soldiers. But the fear spread faster than commands, officers hesitating, crews shaking, some even abandoning their posts as explosions ripped through their ships, and in that hesitation came death, for the humans wasted no moment. Their weapons locked onto every weakness, every gap, and with each strike, another ship fell silent. The Council had always believed numbers alone would bring victory, but they were wrong, because Earth did not fight with numbers. Earth fought with precision, with fury, and with an unbroken will that no alien could understand. Each human warship moved like a predator, circling, striking, vanishing into shadows, then striking again, until even the bravest alien captains felt their courage drain away, leaving only fear. In one corner of the battlefield, an alien dreadnought, larger than any human ship, turned its massive guns toward the human fleet, its commander roaring that he would crush the insects himself, and the ship unleashed a storm of fire, energy beams slicing across the void, tearing small human craft apart. But the humans did not retreat, they pressed closer, their larger ships drawing its fire while smaller strike vessels slipped through its defenses, dodging beams, weaving through the storm, and, when they reached close range, they unleashed their fury, torpedoes slamming into the dreadnought's armor, boarding pods latching onto its hull, and within moments, human marines stormed inside, black armored figures moving through smoke-filled halls, their rifles blazing, their voices silent, and the dreadnought, once a symbol of Council strength, fell within minutes, its guns silenced forever. When the wreckage drifted lifeless in space, even the Council's bravest leaders felt their courage shatter. On the Council's central world, the great chamber shook with the chaos of panicked voices, leaders shouting over one another, demanding answers, demanding reinforcements, demanding someone to blame. But none of their words could hide the fear in their eyes, the truth that could no longer be denied. Humanity had done the impossible. Humanity had crushed fleets that should have been untouchable. Humanity had risen from silence and struck with a brutality the galaxy had never seen. Some leaders whispered of surrender, their voices trembling, their claws clutching the table. But others roared in anger, refusing to admit defeat, blinded by pride even as their worlds filled with fear. The human fleet did not stop with one victory. They pressed onward, pushing deeper into Council territory, striking at shipyards, smashing supply lines, cutting off reinforcements before they could even form, and every strike was brutal, merciless, leaving no doubt in the minds of those who survived that Earth was not here to beg, Earth was not here to kneel, Earth was here to remind the galaxy what fear truly meant. Civilians on alien worlds watched the skies in terror, stories spreading like wildfire of black warships that came without warning, ships that struck like shadows, leaving only silence behind, and in their hearts grew a truth they could not ignore. Humanity was no longer the species the Council mocked. Humanity was the species the galaxy feared. In the void, amidst the wreckage of another destroyed fleet, the human commander stood in silence on the bridge of his flagship, his eyes steady, his face hard, watching the enemy collapse piece by piece, and he spoke only a few words to his officers: "Continue forward, leave nothing standing." And those words carried across the fleet, every soldier, every sailor, every pilot obeying without question, their hearts united in a single truth. Humanity would show no mercy to those who mocked them, to those who tried to crush them, and the counterattack would not end until the Council understood that Earth had risen, and the galaxy would never forget it. The brutal counterattack was no longer a battle, it was becoming a storm that swept across the stars, burning everything in its path, and though the Council still shouted of resistance, still promised revenge, their voices no longer carried the weight of power, only the trembling echoes of fear, and the galaxy itself seemed to bow before the fire of Earth's wrath. The battlefields of space burned like endless graves, alien wreckage drifting silently while human warships glided forward with cold precision, their black hulls absorbing the light of dying suns, their weapons still glowing faint with the heat of destruction. And in that silence came a voice that carried across the stars, a broadcast from Earth itself, not long, not loud, but sharp like a blade cutting through arrogance. The screens of every surviving Council ship flickered, command centers filled with static, And then the image of a human commander appeared, his armor dark, his eyes steady, his voice calm, and he spoke words that froze the galaxy. You thought Earth was weak. You thought wrong. This is only the beginning. His tone was not raised, not filled with fury. It was quiet, controlled, and that made it more terrifying, because the calmness told every alien listening that humanity was not even close to finished, that the fire they had seen so far was only a spark of the storm waiting to be unleashed. On alien ships, crews stared at the screen with wide eyes, their hands trembling, their voices breaking into whispers, for they had never heard such confidence from a species they once mocked, and the commanders tried to bark orders, tried to cover their fear, but the silence that followed the broadcast was heavier than any weapon, because it was not the scream of victory, it was the promise of more, a promise that could not be stopped. On distant worlds, civilians gathered around their displays, expecting to see council victory speeches, but instead they saw the face of a human commander speaking without fear, warning without hesitation, and in those cities, in those markets, in those streets, whispers spread like fire. Humanity had risen. Humanity was no longer prey, humanity was the predator, and the galaxy trembled with that truth. In the council chamber, the leaders erupted in chaos, voices shouting, claws slamming against the great table, wings flaring in fear, some screaming that this was unacceptable, others trembling as they admitted they had brought this on themselves, and for the first time, the council felt the walls of their chamber close in, the weight of their own arrogance pressing down upon them. One of the younger councillors, scales still bright with youth, cried out that they should beg for mercy, that they should surrender before more fleets were destroyed, but the elder leaders silenced him with roars of pride, demanding that no one kneel to earth, that the council would never submit, but their words were hollow, their eyes betraying the truth. Fear had already taken root, fear so deep that no roar could hide it. Back in the human fleet, the soldiers listened to the broadcast in silence, their faces hard, their hearts steady, because they knew their commander's words were not empty. They were the truth, and they would carry that truth forward with every strike. Boarding parties returned from captured ships, their armor scorched, their weapons smoking, and their reports were simple and cold: enemy resistance crushed, objectives complete, targets destroyed, and the humans prepared to move again, their ships reloading, their engines turning, their course set deeper into council territory. The counterattack was no longer defense. It had become punishment, and punishment was only just beginning. Alien survivors tried to regroup, sending frantic messages for reinforcements, but the silence that answered them was chilling, for many of their fleets had already fallen, many of their admirals already dead, and those who remained were too afraid to respond, fearing they would be the next target. In the cities of the galaxy, whispers spread faster than any order, whispers that the council had lied, that the council was losing, that humanity's voice had broken their pride, and those whispers carried more weight than any weapon, because the power of fear was spreading far beyond the battlefield, reaching hearts the humans had not even touched yet. The council, desperate to appear strong, ordered more fleets into the fight, but even as they spoke, their voices shook, and their generals hesitated, because they knew every new ship sent was only more fuel for Earth's fire, and still they obeyed, because pride blinded them, because arrogance still clung to their bones. But in the quiet corners of the chamber, a few leaders whispered to one another in secret, whispers of surrender, whispers of negotiation, whispers that humanity could not be crushed, and those whispers, though quiet, grew stronger with each passing moment. The human commander, after giving the broadcast, stood silent on his bridge, watching as the enemy scrambled, his face calm, his voice steady as he gave the next order. Advance, no hesitation, no mercy, and the fleet obeyed, engines flaring, weapons charging, moving forward into the dark like shadows hunting prey, and the galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the next strike, waiting for the next fleet to burn, waiting for humanity's brutal answer to echo once again across the stars. The broadcast had been short, but its impact was eternal, because in those few words, the galaxy had felt something it had never felt before: the weight of Earth's wrath. The council chamber no longer felt like a place of power, it felt like a cage filled with frightened creatures. The great dome that once shone with pride now echoing with chaos, voices raised not in control but in panic, every leader shouting at once, every banner of empire trembling under the weight of fear, and the silence of Earth's broadcast still hung heavy in the air, making each alien feel smaller, weaker, more exposed. Some leaders slammed their claws against the table, demanding full mobilization, calling for every fleet, every ship, every weapon to be sent against Earth. Their words filled with anger but their eyes betraying the truth, fear trembling in their pupils, their voices cracking as they tried to hide it. Others spoke in lower tones, their voices sharp with desperation, whispering that Earth could not be stopped, that their fleets had been broken too easily, that continuing this war meant the Council's destruction, and their whispers spread quickly, carried from seat to seat, growing stronger even as the loudest voices tried to silence them. One elder rose from his throne, his scales dull with age, his voice shaking as he told the chamber that this was their fault, that they had mocked the envoy when he stood here, that they had ignored the warning, and that now the price was being carved into the stars with fire. But his words were drowned out by roars of pride from others who could not bear to hear the truth. The chamber split into two halves, one screaming for surrender, the other demanding vengeance. But neither side carried the strength they once held, because the shadow of humanity now loomed over all of them, and even the strongest voices trembled in its presence. Reports continued to pour in, each worse than the last, fleets collapsing, shipyards destroyed, reinforcements cut off before they could even arrive, and every new message was another knife in the pride of the Council. Another reminder that their power meant nothing against Earth's ruthless precision. Holograms of burning ships filled the chamber, images of black human warships drifting through wreckage, images of Marines storming alien vessels and silencing entire crews within minutes, and the sight sent shivers through even the most arrogant leaders. Some tried to look away, some slammed their fists in denial, but all of them knew the truth even if they would not speak it. The galaxy was no longer theirs to control. Outside the chamber, the streets of the Council's capital city filled with whispers as well, civilians gathering around screens that once showed proud victories but now displayed nothing but silence, broken transmissions, and the chilling image of the human commander promising that this was only the beginning. Merchants closed their stalls, citizens hid in their homes, and fear spread through the very heart of the empire that once claimed it ruled the galaxy. Because if Earth could crush fleets so easily, what was to stop them from coming here next? What was to stop those black ships from appearing above this very world? Back inside the chamber, panic began to turn into fighting, leaders standing, wings spreading, claws flashing, voices raised in fury as they blamed each other for the disaster, accusing one another of weakness, of arrogance, of betrayal, and the chamber became a storm of rage and fear. But beneath the shouting was the one truth no one dared speak aloud. The humans had already won the first part of this war, and the Council had no idea how to stop them. Even those who roared for vengeance could not hide the trembling in their voices, the doubt in their eyes, because they all knew that if Earth had more hidden strength, more fleets waiting in silence, then the galaxy itself might already belong to humanity. In a dark corner, one counselor whispered to another that perhaps the only chance of survival was to beg for negotiation, to send envoys to Earth and pray for mercy. But the other only shook his head, his eyes wide, his voice low, saying that mercy was no longer possible, that humanity's silence had been broken, and now their wrath would not stop until the Council itself was on its knees. And as those words sank into the shadows of the hall, the chamber grew colder, for even those who roared the loudest began to realize what their pride had cost them. And though they would never admit it aloud, in their hearts, every one of them felt the same thing, fear of Earth. Far away, in the void where the fleets still burned, humanity advanced without pause, their silence a greater weapon than any word, their counterattack steady and brutal, and as the Council trembled in their hall, the black warships moved forward, closer and closer, their presence a promise that soon the galaxy's fear would no longer be whispers, it would be reality. The survivors of the shattered fleets drifted back toward their home systems, their ships limping, hulls torn, engines broken, and their crews silent with fear, eyes staring at the black emptiness of space as if expecting human warships to appear from the dark at any moment. Once proud admirals who had boasted of crushing Earth now sat hunched in their command chairs, their voices gone, their fleets reduced to fragments, their pride shattered like the wreckage around them. The messages they sent to the Council were short, broken, and filled with despair. Our armadas are gone. The humans are unstoppable. We cannot hold them back. Each word spread like poison through the galaxy, carried from world to world, until civilians who had once laughed at Earth now spoke its name in whispers, their voices trembling with a fear their leaders could no longer hide. On distant colonies, markets fell silent as news arrived, crowds gathering around public screens to watch the images of destruction. Black human warships moving like shadows through the wreckage, their weapons glowing faint red, their silence more terrifying than any threat. Parents pulled their children close, soldiers looked away from the displays in shame, and whispers turned into a single question. What if Earth came here next? For the first time in centuries, entire empires that had lived under the shadow of the Council's dominance felt something they had never felt before. Hope that the Council could be broken, hope that their chains might be shattered by the very species the Council had mocked. Within the Council chamber itself, the leaders raged louder, their voices cracking as they shouted over the endless stream of reports, blaming the survivors for cowardice, blaming each other for arrogance, blaming anyone but themselves, yet deep inside, they all knew the truth. The humans had outplayed them, had outbuilt them, had outprepared them, and no amount of shouting could erase the fear pressing into their bones. Some called for purges, demanding that alien races who doubted the Council be silenced. But others knew it was too late, because doubt was already spreading, rebellion already brewing, and the Council's iron grip was slipping faster with every defeat. The human fleet, meanwhile, did not celebrate, did not boast, they only advanced, cutting deeper into Council space with precise strikes, destroying supply lines, tearing apart shipyards, leaving no chance for recovery. They broadcast nothing more, no threats, no warnings, only silence, and that silence was worse than fire, because the galaxy could not guess where the next strike would fall, which fleet would vanish next, which world would burn before the others. Even the survivors who had fled could not find peace, their dreams haunted by the memory of black ships appearing from nowhere, of marines boarding their halls like shadows, of their comrades screaming before being silenced forever. In the great cities of the Council's core worlds, protests began, voices rising against their leaders, citizens shouting that the war was madness, that the humans were too strong, that the Council had doomed them all, and soldiers were forced to march into the streets to hold back their own people. But even the soldiers' hands shook, their loyalty trembling under the weight of the fear that spread faster than any order. Across the galaxy, one truth was becoming impossible to deny. Humanity had become the storm, and the Council had no shelter left. The survivors who returned from the front were treated not as heroes but as ghosts, their ships broken, their crews hollow-eyed, their stories chilling every listener. They spoke of human fleets appearing without warning, of weapons that tore through shields as if they were paper, of soldiers who fought with a coldness that no one could match, and their voices carried only one message: the humans cannot be stopped. The words spread further than any Council decree, reaching ears the Council could not control, and the galaxy trembled as it began to realize that the age of the Council was ending, and the age of Earth was beginning. Far away in the void, the human fleet prepared its next strike, engines burning steady, weapons charged, moving like predators toward their prey, and though the galaxy whispered in fear, the humans themselves spoke no words, because they did not need to. The fire they left behind was their only voice, and it was a voice the galaxy could no longer ignore.